what we're going to do is we have the honor of having a very special guest tonight, and the efforts to make that happen belong primarily to Mayor Andy Berman of Mill Valley, and so we're going to introduce Andy right now to welcome many folks that helped to do this, and all the folks in the city of Mill Valley. Andy.
Welcome everybody. I'm going to be very, very quick because I was told to be quick. In fact, Stephanie, my colleague, gave me my BS blaster pills before I came up here. She told me to take one, and she hands these to me at the council meetings as well too. So I'll be very brief and very quiet, I promise. And I want you to know, this is the first event we've had. We love this building. We've had a lot of nice compliments tonight from everybody about the facility. This is the first time. The floor was just redone, so we look down, no scuff marks please, and just enjoy the floor, because we really put a lot of work into this. It's our first event here, so it's kind of a kickoff for MCCMC and a kickoff for this room again. I got two things I want to do tonight. I have a lot of people to introduce. Kelsey, our city clerk, gave me 2 pages of people. So I'm just going to very quickly run through the list because there are some special people that we want to acknowledge, and then I wanted to say a couple of words about Jared. So sitting at this table here, I'm going to miss everybody. Sean and I are not going to run again. This is a great group of people here. Ken Wachtel, my colleague, council member. Ken and I have done more public meetings. I say this every time. I think I've done close to 200 plus meetings with this man in public because we sat on the planning commission together. My election partner, Sean Marshall, and our vice mayor right now. We've got Stephanie Bolton Peters, who's my doctor, as you can tell. She gives me all the things I need. Gary is my partner on the sewage agency of Southern Marin. We share that responsibility. Jim McCann, our city manager. And sitting at the table, obviously, is Jared Huffman and Jenny Calloway, his aide. So I want to welcome everybody here. This is really dangerous, having a meeting with my bald head this time of day, so don't get blinded. But this is, we've got all the supervisors. Well, no, Judy Arnold couldn't come tonight, but Kate Sears, where's Kate? Are you here? Where's Kate? Kate in the back. With Maureen and Leslie, I really can't even, there you guys are. Her aides are here. Katie Rice is right here. I love the yellow. Susan Adams, my wing, the best part of the chicken. Nobody knows what I'm talking about, but that's an affectionate thing I was saying. Steve Kinsey, and I told Steve, you can clap for Steve, please. The only thing we don't like about Steve is that Jim and I run the Dipsy race. I told Steve this, I just finally came clean. Jim and I run the Dipsy race every year, and Steve runs the Dipsy race, and you open up the local paper, there's not one shot of me or Jim, and it's all about Steve. This is our hometown, and he just takes it every time from us. Oh, it's okay, he deserves it, he's a good guy. We got great city staff here, and some former mayors. We've got, stand up big guys, the big man right here, our planning director, Mike Moore. You have to Mike, I mean, he's got 6'7". We've got Angie, 200 digital downloads a day in the library, right here. Angie Brenner, our librarian. Tim McSorley from our Department of Public Works, our senior supervising engineer. Eric Erickson, who's always got $7 million in cash reserves available for us. He does a great job on our finances. Jeff, the best looking man in Mill Valley, Davidson. My wife loves this guy. Former mayor and flood zone chair, Bob Burton. Angel It's All Good Bernal, our police chief. Dick Spotswood, everybody knows Dick, right? Former mayor. 3 times, nobody's counting. Mary, we have where's our Supremes are really Lynn Walsh, who's our assistant to the city manager, Mary Lansing, our assistant to the city manager, and Kelsey Rogers, where's Kelsey? So these 3 really did this event tonight. I really just show up. They did an outstanding job. And then I think, it's always dangerous when you do this and you don't look at your list, so I probably missed somebody along the way here. Oh, Kat Reisinger, where's Kat? Oh, there you are, Kat. So this is Kat's facility. We're in Kat's home. She's the supervisor here in this facility. And then I've got some quick other folks. Where's Patsy White, Legal Women Voters? Not here. I thought she was here. Nancy, I saw Nancy Hall Bennett. Where's Nancy? Yep, there she is. Nice to see you. Wendy Freifeld, are you here at the MCC Legislative Analyst? There we go. And then the MMWD crowd. We got Krishna Kumar, who I did see here, the GM. Krishna, 8 months on the job. Cynthia Kohler, my very good friend, board member, and then Lisa Cross, right? Lisa, I know we're here. Lisa Cross as well, too. And then I want to thank D'Angelo's and Mill Valley Market for the food tonight. I want to thank the Media Center of Marin, where we got Scott and Damien, and I think Michael's here maybe someplace. So we're going to have this thing ready and televised. And then, where's Diane? There you are, Diane. This is your event too. Thank you so much. Okay, hold on one second. You're mayor, you get to do things. And I was trying to figure out the best way to introduce Jared tonight. And so I created a proclamation for him. I'm just going to read the proclamation. It's got the official seal. It's got my signature. And so this is a proclamation. So this is my introduction for Jared. Jared, welcome. The introduction for you. A proclamation of the City of Mill Valley, California, declaring the connection and magnitude of importance between the Honorable Jared Huffman and the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council Members 2013-2014 season kickoff by Andy Berman. I, Andrew Berman, Mayor of the City of Mill Valley, California, do hereby declare the importance and relevancy of the Honorable Jared Huffman speaking to the Marin County Council of Mayors and Council Members as follows. There are places to go and people to see, but few as pleasant as MCCMC. Tonight is our kickoff for 2013. What should we do and who should be seen? Everyone wants the event to be fun, relevant, meaningful, libations, and none of those boring soirees we all have to attend, where the speaker's drone on without any end, and the chicken is rubber, no drinks in the house, no friends or colleagues looming about, and likely already your third meeting that week with no place to hide and your mind on the brink of sticking the butter knife right into your drink, simply to avoid having to think. So you see how the pressure going into tonight was so grand that it nearly froze me with fright? Not to mention that it's my last chance to share a few thoughts as mayor to this group that cares about our dear county and the people we cherish, the Bay Mount Tam, let none of it perish. The food and the wine, and of course the 101, yes, even the gadflies. We all know more than one. So what would I do to handle these factors? Well, I got to thinking and sought out some backers. We needed good food, a great place to be, a real tight agenda, not too bad of a fee. And I wanted everyone's participation, you see, hence the questions solicited. Thanks for sending them to me. But what I needed most, the heart of it all, was a speaker so great who could stand 10 feet tall. One who would certainly woo in the crowd and make Andy Berman incredibly proud. Who would I go to? Who could it be? And in less than 10 seconds, it was obvious to me. He's the man we all eagerly sent to the House with Abby and Nathan and Susan, his spouse. He helps keep Republicans in check and in place, starting with Roberts, who he defeated with grace. He's a champion for coasts, women and vets, democracy, safety, and students, no less. And with everyone enjoying life home on the range, we are thankful he's focused on our climate change. A solid track record. It's so plain to see that his illustrious career is only beginning to be. So please, let's all rise and welcome our guest, our son, Jared Huffman. He's truly our best.
Wow, what a great introduction. Thanks to the mayor and poet laureate of Mill Valley, Andy Berman. Thanks for your service, and thanks for including me here tonight. It is a real honor for me to be with you, and I'll tell you, I want to just spend a moment reminding you that I have a new congressional district. Some folks might have gotten familiar with a nice, compact little district Lynn Woolsey had for 20 years, where it was all of Marin County and most of Sonoma County, and she could drive across it in an hour, and that was pretty nice. Well, it changed. It's still really nice, but it goes from the Golden Gate Bridge all the way to the Oregon border, and it's now a 7-hour drive from one end of the district to the other. I made most of that drive yesterday, and it's a big job because this district is not only geographically huge, it is very diverse. I'm here in an incredibly wonderful, affluent suburban community in the southern end of my district. Yesterday, I was up north in some very remote rural poverty. I have more Indian tribes in my congressional district than any congressional district in America. I have the biggest trees. I have what I think is the best wine anywhere. I have incredible coastline. I have a third of the California coastline in this district. And of course, I have most of the marijuana in the United States. So I just say those things to remind you that it's a big and diverse and wonderful district. And that makes this a really big job, a job that there's no way I could do without 3 things. One of them is an incredibly supportive family, and I've got that, and we're making it work. I'm often rolling Susan and the kids with me for weekend trips to far away parts of the district, and we have a lot of fun with it, and they come out to Washington, and it's working out really well. The second thing I need is a great staff. Check, I got that. Of course, led here in the district by Jenny Calloway, who all of you know. But the third thing that I absolutely have to do this big job and to do it well is partners in local government. And I have that in a big way. I really do believe that we're all on the same team. We represent the same people. And I've been in government long enough, and I know most of you have, to see that sometimes it's not always a team effort. Sometimes it's the locals pointing at the state, and the state pointing at the locals, and the feds getting pointed at or pointing to. And I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that we all represent the same people. So we really do need to function as a team, and I just feel so very fortunate to have all of you as terrific leaders in Marin County that I can turn to and that I will turn to in the months and hopefully years ahead. So tonight, Andy asked me to do things a little bit differently. He didn't want to do a big stand and deliver speech from your congressman. He wants to get me in the ring and to go right into your questions. So we're going to do that. I had a friendly twist on it, though. I thought, since the issues I'm dealing with are so vexing, why don't you give me the answers and I'll guess what the questions are? Kind of like Jeopardy, right? Wouldn't that be better?
But I already have the questions on the card.
Okay, well, we'll do it your way, Andy. But before we do this, I do want to just say a couple of things. I am going to return to Congress in a week and a half. And I'm returning to what so far ranks as the least productive Congress in American history. And that is unfortunate, but that's what you get when you measure it by actual output, by the production of legislation. Speaker Boehner was asked by CBS News about this a few weeks ago, and you may have seen the interview, and he said, oh, no, you can't judge us by the laws we pass, you have to judge us by the laws we repeal. Now, unfortunately, we haven't repealed any either, so by any measure, this is a non-productive Congress, a Congress that is divided. We've got a divided country, but this Congress is amplifying those divisions, and it can be frustrating. When I get back, things are really going to come to a head on fiscal issues, because you know we haven't had a federal budget in recent years. What we've done instead is we've passed a series of continuing resolutions in place of full funding bills, and a lot of these temporary fixes are all set to expire at the end of September. October 1st is the new federal fiscal year. And coinciding with that is we're going to run into that debt limit again. We had a temporary extension of our debt limit. And so when I get back, we're going to have about 18 working days to resolve the confluence of all these events and figure out whether we can avoid a government shutdown. And you're going to be hearing a lot about this increasingly starting in the next week or two. So it can be frustrating occasionally, but I want to just tell you briefly what I'm doing to try to still get some things done, even with our divided Congress. The first thing is I'm not going to accept as dogma the fact that you can't legislate as a freshman member of the minority party. I'm going to keep trying to push some things, and I have already passed a bill out of the House of Representatives to protect some land on the Mendocino coast and add it to the National Coastal Monument. So I'm hopeful that we'll get that passed this year. I've got a few other bills. They're not going to change the world, but they're modest things that I think we still can do on a bipartisan basis, even with tough politics in Washington. The other thing I'm going to do is keep co-sponsoring bigger bills that I think ought to be passing, but probably aren't going to pass with the politics of this House of Representatives. But I think it's important to keep these issues alive, to keep these policies with a high profile and moving forward, because I think our politics can change sometimes quicker than we believe. I mean, who would have thought we would be sitting here tonight and just about every politician in America is evolving on marriage equality, right? And we have a Supreme Court that has now opened the door, and here in California, marriage equality is the law. That happened very quickly. And yeah. And you know, there is some good news. When I return to Congress, after we get through the fiscal fights that we're going to have through September and maybe into October, we have an opportunity to turn to the immigration issue and to do something in a bipartisan way on an issue that has always been a partisan lightning rod issue. There was a lot of Republican leadership in the United States Senate a couple of months ago when they passed comprehensive immigration reform. And I think there's the possibility of the same kind of leadership in the House. It's going to be something we all have to push for. I'm going to push for it. But I think there is hope that we've got the possibility of a historic bipartisan comprehensive immigration fix that we can do. And then on the national security and surveillance issues, there's a very unusual evolving coalition that cuts across all party and philosophical lines that I think is lining up to support some major reforms that will keep our national security interests in mind, that will preserve our national interests, and have foreign surveillance programs, but make them do a better job of respecting our privacy and our civil liberties. So I'm actually hopeful that we're still going to get a few things done. And remember, even when Congress is polarized and not producing the way we'd like, these are snapshots in time, and we will get through it. So I'm going to answer your questions now, and some of my answers may not be what you'd like to hear. They may also, to you, be discouraging. But just know that I'm going to keep slugging away. I know you're not giving up just because things are divided and gridlocked in Congress. I'm not going to give up, and we're going to find a way to solve our problems. So let's jump in.
All right, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to walk around to each table. We'll start with my colleague and Vice Mayor Sean Marshall. We've got all the questions here. All the questions are on everybody's table, by the way, too. Really thank you for everybody for pulling them in. So if you just want to see other questions that we don't get to tonight, Jared will take it for about a half hour here, and then we'll let him get to his next thing. So Sean, pick a card.
I mean, I can't urge on the card. Okay, because I only have 3 months left in office, I might just completely abandon this question. I am so going rogue. I went rogue a while ago. So I'm going to ask the real question, then I'm going to ask the question that everybody really wants to know. So the real question is, what is the future for healthcare reform and the Affordability Care Act, which I know you know back and forth? Probably the more fun question that I would love for you to talk about is, you have seen the House of Cards. How many people in this room have seen House of Cards? If you haven't,
Netflix.
watch it. It's fascinating. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on how realistic that is.
Let's start with the easier one, the House of Cards. I highly recommend the House of Cards. Anyone in this room is interested enough in politics to enjoy the House of Cards. So go get it on Netflix, do some binge watching. Once you watch the first few episodes, you're hooked. And how real is it? Look, it's over-dramatized. I mean, it amplifies a few things that probably are pretty real. But you know, people aren't killing each other. There aren't murders, and you know, things. At least I don't know about it if it's happening. But it's a great show, and there actually are some interesting little pieces of political lore. One of them that you see in the episodes involves a union protest where a brick is thrown through a window, and they sort of use that event in the media to turn public opinion against the union. Well, that actually happened, and it came from David Axelrod. So there's a lot of little episodes like that are based in truth, and it's interesting to watch for that reason. So let's talk about the Affordable Care Act. I had my first town hall, my first public meeting in Eureka 2 nights ago. And believe it or not, I did it on healthcare reform, on Obamacare. Last time a member of Congress had a town hall on Obamacare in Humboldt County, it didn't go so well. Or anywhere else. Lynn had them in Sonoma, and all those town halls were filled with very angry people, and the politics were awful. This one, now mainly because we targeted the business community, and we made it clear this was going to be about implementation. It was not going to be a big debate about what people think on healthcare reform, was incredibly constructive. There was no shouting, no incivility. It was mostly small business folks, a few individuals, but people that mainly just wanted to know, what does this law do? What do I need to know so I can make good decisions? And I'm really encouraged by that, because I think our debate on this is beginning to shift. Yeah, you still do a poll nationwide and you see that less than a majority of America thinks favorably of the Affordable Care Act. However, I mean, and it's close. It's like 40-something unfavorable and 40-something favorable. When you ask the question, what should we do right now? Should we repeal it, or should we at least try to implement it and make it work? The response is overwhelming. Across party lines, everybody wants to try to at least make this thing work. And that's where we're having just a very non-productive series of fights in the House of Representatives, because when I get back, we'll have, I think, our 40th vote by the House Republicans trying to repeal it. It can't be, it's not going to be repealed, folks. You know that. The president not only got it passed, but he ran for re-election with this as a huge part of his record. And the Supreme Court affirmed it as a matter of law. This is the law of the land. So I hope that we can get beyond, this political theater and maybe work together to start implementing it. Any major legislation we've ever passed in this country that was as big and transformative as this has always needed some fine-tuning and some technical cleanup. That's just inherent in passing big laws. You know that. The problem right now is we can't do it. We can't open up even a small part of it that people would agree on, because the only thing the House Republicans will do is repeal, repeal, repeal. So we got to make it work in spite of the fact that we can't legislate right now on it. And here in California, I think the good news is we're going to make it work. October 1st, the healthcare exchanges go live. You'll be able to go to Covered California. If you're an individual, you'll be able to see a series of plans in different categories. I think it's like bronze, silver, gold, etc. And the pricing, and you'll be able to compare plans on a real apples-to-apples transparent basis in a way that we've never been able to in the past. And the good news is the bids for those plans have come in significantly less than people were concerned about. So there's going to be affordable plans offered where if you have a pre-existing condition, don't worry about it. You're going to get the same plan everybody else gets. You can't be denied coverage. If you're seriously sick and maybe might in the past have approached a lifetime cap, what an awful concept, getting cut off because your health care costs too much. That'll never happen to you again under this law. And if you're a small business and you want to get coverage for your employees, there'll be a SHOP program, same Covered California website, and you'll be able to choose from a series of plans and get tax credits, pretty significant tax credits, to offer coverage to your employees. The provisions that apply to large employers of 50 employees or more are going to kick in a year from now, but I think a lot of employers are going to have some interest in the SHOP program and may get started now on taking advantage of this. But this goes live January 1st. We're all subject to it. A little known fact, there's only one group in America that is mandated by law to buy their health insurance from the exchange, members of Congress. So I'll be right in there with you. I'll be getting my health care from Covered California, and I'm happy to do it. And I think we're going to make this work. It will require some improvements as we go forward, but this is going to be a step forward in a very good way for healthcare in California.
All right, Bob Burton, card.
Thank you, Andy. Jared, do you have any thoughts or reactions on the Drakes Bay Oyster Farm dispute on Capitol Hill? Don't blame me, I was handed the card. As a member of the,
chose it.
Yes, thank you. As a member of the Natural Resources Committee, what do you think the ultimate outcome will be? And this is not a shell game.
I don't know what's worse, that pun or watching Dick Spotswood pick up his pen. Here's what I want to say about Drake's Bay. We need the court to hurry up and make a ruling so that we can have some closure and move on as a community. This has just been such a brutally divisive issue. And I think those that are familiar with my role, to the extent that I've had one in it, I have had passionate arguments presented to me by both sides, friends on both sides, environmentalists on both sides. And I have never seen this issue as black and white and as cut and dried as the passionate advocates on each side sometimes see it. And so I haven't really made either side very happy because I see some merit in both of their arguments. I see great equities and lots of values I can identify with on the side that the oyster farm is arguing, and I see the same thing on the side that thinks that there's an act of Congress and a reversion to wilderness at the end of that lease is what ought to happen. These are both valid perspectives. And I think it's important to remember what we did a few years ago. Senator Dianne Feinstein got very involved in this, and of course she was a great champion for Drake's Bay Oyster Company. And she wanted to make crystal clear that the Secretary of Interior had discretion to make the call, that the Secretary wasn't bound by any prior acts of Congress, however they might be interpreted, that there was discretion that existed. Everybody supported it. Well, not everybody supported it, but the ag community supported it. And that law was passed. Well, fast forward to a few months back, Secretary Ken Salazar exercised that discretion. And he may have surprised a lot of people. He may not have decided it the way you or I or others would have wanted, but he exercised the discretion that Congress gave him, and he decided the lease was going to expire. Now that's being challenged in court. We hope we get a ruling soon, but I think we have to respect the process. You can't just sort of legislate your way around an agency decision that Congress clearly set up to be an agency decision. So my view is I want to respect that process. I have sympathies in both directions. If the lease expires and that's the final story, I want you to know I'm going to do everything I can to move the community forward, including helping Kevin and his employees. It's not his first choice. I'm sure it's not what he wants to even think about right now, but if we can find him another place to operate an oyster business, I'd be delighted to try to be part of making that happen. But if the court rules the other way and says we got to go back and do it all over again, and we've got a new Secretary of Interior, then let's respect that process and let's see where it goes. So that's my answer.
Diane?
This is a question about transportation. What about our much-needed road repairs here in Marin? Is federal aid forthcoming? What discussions has Congress had to supplement the gas tax for transportation? With more and more hybrids and electric vehicles, people will be buying less gas. How will we in the U.S. fund road improvements needed for our highways and freeways in the future? And finally, do you see any transportation funding / grants on the horizon that would allow us to finally complete the Marin-Sonoma Narrows project? More than $200 million more needed between Marin and Sonoma.
That's a great question with lots of local importance in our region. So let me just say a few things that I think you already know. The good old days of members of Congress going back to Washington and getting earmarks for your transportation projects are over, at least for now. And I say that with a lot of regret, frankly, because I really want to find that federal money, not only for the Narrows, but for the critical road repairs and for SMART and for other things that I really support and want to see moving forward and accelerated. So what we're left with in the post-earmark era is an executive branch that has an awful lot of discretion, maybe not as much accountability, I would argue, when we previously had a system where at least legislators were elected by the people and got to go through a process to have these projects become law. But nevertheless, it is what it is, and one of the things we're going to have to do to get funding for transportation projects is really come together and be squeaky wheels with the agencies when it comes time to apply and compete for funding. So there are Tiger grants, there's other grant funding that we'll be able to continue applying for. SMART is applying for one right now. I know many of us in this room are supporting that grant application, and hopefully it will come through. But the bigger picture of transportation funding remains very unclear. And the question points out, I think very appropriately, that we've got a declining revenue source for transportation. The gas tax is producing less money than it did in the past, and in a way that's a good news story because fuel economy has a lot to do with that, and hybrid and electric cars. But the reality is, California, which used to be a donor state because of all the gas tax revenues that we contributed back, and we didn't get our fair share even under the old system, we now get even less. And there really are no donor states now, but because the general fund is backfilling the shortfall from the gas tax, but California contributes more to the general fund than any other state, so I guess you could say we still are a donor state. We gotta argue that we need our fair share here in California, and we may have an opportunity to do it as part of the MAP 21 reauthorization next year. So that is it's going to expire in 2014. There's lots of talk about it. There have been some informational hearings about where do we go, how do we meet this funding shortfall. Steve Kinsey and others have come back to Washington, D.C. To be part of that lobbying effort. And I think everybody acknowledges the gas tax. We've got to find a successor to the gas tax. I've even heard some Republicans say that they would support different things. I've heard some Republicans kind of quietly talk about a carbon tax. But you know the politics of taxes. Even just an increase in the gas tax, which is another possible way to fill the shortfall, is very loaded politically, at least right now in Congress. So I guess the answer is we've got until the end of 2014 to give our input into the reauthorization of MAP 21, which is the key funding mechanism for most of this transportation. And I think we're all going to need to work together and make our best case for something that's reliable, that's not a declining or not some short-term stopgap. And I'll work with all of you. I'm open to your ideas on what we ought to be advocating in that regard. There's one other thing I'll mention in response to this, and this is kind of back to my belief that earmarks may be better than kind of what we've replaced them with. I'm supporting a bill that is a rare bipartisan collaboration between the chairman of the Budget Committee, Paul Ryan, and our ranking member, who, you think of these folks, Chris Van Hollen, you think these folks is always clashing on taxation, and budget issues. Here's one they agree on, and it's a hybrid line item veto. What it would do is kind of let us do some things like earmarks again, but have as an accountability measure the ability of the president, just like Governor Brown can do at the state level, to strike it out. But then it would come back to Congress, and there'd be an opportunity to vote on those specific items. Because one of the critiques of earmarks is that maybe Congress didn't actually vote on that item. It got slipped in, it was kind of part of some rider that nobody read about. So I think that kind of reform, over the long term would be a great way to bring back some of the accountability and responsiveness that earmarks, at least in theory, provide, but with some checks so that you didn't have bridges to nowhere.
Take it over to the other side of the room to the supervisors. Katie, oh, Susan's, no, she's pointing to you. And I have respect. I mean, we spent 2 years together. I was nervous coming over here.
Oh, that's way too long. Here we go. This is good. All right. Is this Employee of the Month? No, I'm sorry. Inside joke. Jared, welcome to Mill Valley, my hometown. Your reaction, if any, to Coons versus St. John's River Water Management District, the recent U.S. Supreme Court decision?
Yeah, you folks are going to be the real experts on this, because I know you've got lobbyists and lawyers that are trying to decide what does that Supreme Court decision mean for your local land use planning. But this is another unfortunate step, in my opinion, by the Supreme Court in the direction of kind of elevating property rights and the takings clause above the community needs and the needs that we have certainly locally to govern and to fund the critical needs in our community. So this decision, as I read it, just raises the bar even higher on this nexus and proportionality requirement for local restrictions on permits and things like in lieu fees and fines, or not fines, but fees that people are asked to pay as part of their project application. And I don't have a great answer for you. When you get a Supreme Court decision telling you that the Fifth Amendment says you cannot do this, there's no simple fix that even Congress can really bring to the table. You're either going to have to amend the Constitution or get a new Supreme Court or find something in that court decision and figure out a way around it. And I'm sure that that's where the League of Cities and the other folks that you're working very creatively with are going. I know that our community infrastructure and funding needs are not going away. And so we're going to have to find an answer to this. But I don't have that answer right now. And if you can think of something I can do at the congressional level, I'm in. Because I understand the challenges you all face and the need for project applicants to be part of the solution, you know, whether through set-asides or conditions on their permits or in lieu fees and other fees.
Bob?
Jared, do you support any movement of the Democratic Party toward the center? For example, creating more flexibility on retirement and other benefits for government workers, permitting assessment of teacher performance in schools, or permitting more immigration based on skills rather than family ties? How willing are you to compromise with Republicans to get things done for the good of the country?
Well, let's take those. Will you say the three examples again for me, please?
Absolutely. Let's see. How willing are you to compromise with Republicans to get things done for the good of the country? Do you support any movement of the Democratic Party toward the center?
The examples.
And the examples: creating more flexibility on retirement and other benefits for government workers, permitting assessment of teacher performance in schools, or permitting more immigration based on skills rather than family ties.
Great, absolutely. So, I mean, the answer is I will absolutely compromise to get things done if they're sensible. I don't think it's my job to move the Democratic Party, but I'll just tell you that I like to solve problems, and if there's a good idea, Democrat, Republican, whatever, I'm happy to work on it. The examples you put out there, the pension, I supported one of the most comprehensive pension reform legislation in many, many years in Sacramento just last year. I know it probably did not solve all our problems, but it was a step. And so I'm on to the federal level where we don't see the kind of acute unfunded pension liabilities that you continue to unfortunately see at the local level and at the state level. So if there's a need there, of course, I'm going to address it. I'm going to be fair to employees. I'm going to be respectful to employees, but I think I've shown that I will support reforms. In terms of teacher evaluations, I've also supported reforms that would include teacher evaluations as one metric, data as one metric, test scores, things like that. But I'm real leery of one-size-fits-all rigid evaluation systems. I think it needs to be more flexible and more professionally enriching for our teachers. So I haven't seen a bill yet in Congress that would address that, but that's sort of where I'm coming from. And on immigration reform, I'm supporting a comprehensive immigration fix like what came out of the Senate that includes both of the things in that question. It includes family ties as a priority, but it also includes the needs of certain industries and professions as a priority. That's why agriculture and high-tech H-1B visas got special treatment, as they should, because those are acute needs that we have. But let me tell you, I've met with a lot of folks that have been impacted by deportations and by our, in my opinion, broken immigration system. And the family separation side of this is the most compelling. I'm real sympathetic to Silicon Valley. I'm real sympathetic to our farmers. I want them to have their labor needs met, but I don't want to separate families. So I'm going to support keeping families together.
Lynn, you're right next to me, and you helped tonight, so.
Hello. This is number 12 if you're reading along. Thank you. Andy just said I was smart, so
That's
I
nice.
just thought I'd share that with everyone.
Tell him to write a poem for you.
All right, on to the question. Will there be federal funding for affordable housing in Marin? What, if anything, do you see happening at the federal level to help local communities provide affordable housing?
This is a bad news story. So I'm just going to be real candid with you. We were already underfunding affordable housing at the federal level. And with the sequester cuts, I mean, the housing funding in the federal budget is one of those exposed areas of the discretionary budget that got hit very hard by the sequester. And the continuing resolution that was passed in the spring continued those sequester levels of funding on through the end of September. And you know about the effects. What it's done is it's taken our public housing authorities and it's kind of treated them the way that the state used to treat local government and schools by just cutting back and expecting them to continue to meet their mandates and hammering their cash flow. So many of these public housing authorities have had to tap into reserves and are just stretched very, very thin. Thankfully here in Marin, they've been allowed to do that on a stopgap basis. The county has been very helpful. Thank you to our supervisors. But we need long-term help on housing funding. And what I can tell you is the crisis is in the House of Representatives, and in my opinion, it's in a minority of the members of the House of Representatives that are holding this issue hostage. And it is sort of reveals a disconnect that we're seeing right now in the House between the sort of feel-good partisan rhetoric of the Ryan budget. When that was passed on a party line basis, a lot of my Republican colleagues felt real good about it, thought they were being fiscally responsible by setting all these austere funding levels and being tough on government programs like this. But then when it comes time for the reality of passing the appropriation bills that actually fund at that level that they were all excited about, they can't even get the votes in their party to pass it. They had to pull the bill back a few weeks ago, the THUD bill that includes also transportation. So honestly, the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives is just having an intense fight with itself, and they're losing. They cannot agree on the rhetoric versus the reality. Many of them don't want to put up a vote that brings these awful cuts back to their district. But they're under enormous pressure to be tough guys on these funding levels. And this is one of the things that's lining up to lead to a possible showdown over funding of the government in the next 6 weeks. So I am hopeful that somehow cooler heads will prevail. I think there's a majority of the members of the House that would vote for better funding levels on affordable housing and that would fund a good farm bill and transportation and Army Corps of Engineers funding and all these other things that are just getting hammered right now. But the politics are going to come to a major head in the next 6 weeks. And it may take, it may be tough before we get to a good resolution.
I think we have time for one, maybe two more questions. Herb bribed me with 2 tickets to the Sausalito Arts Festival if I let him ask a question for me. And it worked. I will. I just declared it, didn't I? Dan, we have to declare it. I just declared it, right? You're going to let Thomas do it. Okay.
This is question number 2 on the list. How can Congressman Huffman help direct federal funds to Marin to create a direct connection between the Richmond Bridge and Highway 101 at the Green Bray interchange?
I want to get in the middle of that one. As I mentioned earlier, I want to get transportation funding to my district to meet the priorities that my district decides need to be funded. So I will do everything I can to make that happen, and we'll all be working together on the ones that everyone can agree on. And as soon as you agree on that one, let's go.
Well put. All right, Kate, come on.
What major legislation is percolating in Congress that might be passed in the next 12 to 18 months? How might it affect us here in Marin? And what are your top initiatives over this period of time? Now, there's a good ending question.
Well, there are some, I alluded earlier to some big impactful bills that I think have the chance of passing even with our divided politics. Immigration is the biggest. It's going to take a lot of work, and immigration is like a number of other really important things that are pending in the House of Representatives. The Senate has been able to actually pass a few things, but in the House, the reason it's bogged down is because Speaker Boehner has a very tenuous hold on his speakership. He actually had over a dozen members of his own party vote against him for Speaker, openly, in January when we held that vote. That's really unprecedented. And he's had an awful lot of them speaking out and criticizing him in the media, voting against the majority or against the leadership a lot of the time. So on any given appropriations bill, for example, he may have 30 to 40 members that are just going to vote no as a matter of principle. And this is a lot of the 2010 Tea Party class that came there to really fight government. Immigration is a great example where he's got, I think, a minority, but a huge minority of his caucus that doesn't even want to allow anything to pass that could go into a conference committee with the Senate. They're that afraid of something coming out of a conference committee that might include a path to citizenship. And that's pretty much the key fight, is will there be a path to citizenship? So he has members who are saying, don't even allow anything like that to move. Instead, do this piecemeal thing where maybe we do a little DREAM Act, maybe we do some stronger border enforcement. Definitely they want to do stronger border enforcement. And maybe they do some visa reform to help with the needs of some industries. That is not comprehensive immigration reform, and it would, I don't think anything will move forward if that's the result. But if he allows something comprehensive to actually come to a vote with a path to citizenship, I think you can expect that there'll be a threat to remove him as Speaker. And so he's just got this very awkward political balance that he's got to do, and I hope he decides to do what's right for the country and not just what's right to preserve his title as Speaker. But that'll be the key on immigration reform. And gun violence is the other big issue that has been raging since January this year. I don't think the Senate has given up on moving bipartisan universal background check legislation forward. And I know Vice President Biden has continued to work tirelessly on flipping some votes and turning it around. Obviously, you got Mayor Bloomberg and OFA and some other folks that are going to bring some political pressure. I think they're going to do that after the immigration piece is resolved. But I think it's still something that we're going to see action on. If that can pass the Senate, we do have a few Republicans on board and a companion measure in the House. Not yet 218 votes, which is what we would need, but the fact that we start with 3 or 4 Republicans is at least something. And again, Speaker Boehner will face the choice because he'll have a very angry bloc in his caucus that says if you let that come to a vote, we're taking you out as Speaker. So those are the politics we'll have to navigate. The NSA surveillance issue I mentioned, I think we will be able to actually move and pass. We're going to go back into hearings as soon as we get back to Congress. The more we look into this, the more we see that safeguards and checks and balances are sorely needed in these programs, and I think we'll be able to move something, and hopefully something that the President can sign. I'd like to be able to tell you that there's big climate legislation and other things like that we could pass in the next year or so, but I think that would be irresponsible of me. It doesn't mean I won't be trying. I'll be co-sponsoring it, and I'll be moving everything I can, but I think my expectations are a little more modest beyond those bills that I've mentioned.
Jared, do you have time for one more question, or?
Sure.
Okay. My new friend Andrew McCullough here. You delivered a good replacement there. You did. He's a sharp guy. I was thinking MTA.
So, Jared, thanks again for coming tonight. And in the context that all politics is local, this is truly local that we're ending the evening with. What is the likelihood the Army Corps will get appropriate funding for completing Unit 4 in Ross to address the Ross Valley flood control problem?
That's pretty local. That's a great local project, though, one that I definitely know about and want to support. So where that project stands, some of you already know this, but the next step in the path towards Army Corps funding is it has to become what they call policy compliant. And in order to do that, they go through this thing that they call charrettes. And those are happening, I believe, in mid-September. So once that happens, and the project is sort of given that stamp of policy compliance, it gets to compete for funding with other policy compliant projects in a pool that has a lot more projects than money, but at least the competition is on. And at that point, we're just going to need to put together the mother of all consensus applications for funding. I think the need is something, Katie would know this, I think the need is something like $700,000 for the creek and $75,000 for the watershed that we're hoping to get from the Corps. Yeah, first step. Okay, so that's our work plan, and we'll go in there and compete and hopefully get some money for you. Absolutely.
Jared, if you're willing to take one more question, we only have one more table left. But I want to watch your time.
No, go for it.
All right, last table. Who's going to choose at this table? Wait, your son here. Wait, why don't we do that? Or a family member. We're going to do. What's your first name again? Daniel. Daniel, there you go.
Well, this is number 14. Oh, this is good. Your thoughts on Proposition 8 and its effect on the initiative process?
So I thought the initiative process was broken way before Prop 8. But I guess what you learned from Proposition 8 is it's possible for the voters of California to pass a wrong-headed initiative that is actually unconstitutional. Surprise, surprise. Look, we got a happy ending. In some ways, we should be glad Prop 8 passed, because it led to the process that got us the court decisions and ultimately the Supreme Court jurisprudence that is now making marriage equality possible, not just in California, but I think very soon in just about everywhere else in the country. So bad things can lead to good results sometimes, and you can, for the Prop 8 proponents, you can lose by winning sometimes. But nevertheless, the initiative process is broken, and it's way too easy for groups to qualify things for the ballot. It's not transparent, the groups that are supporting them once they get to the ballot. And this gets us into campaign finance reform and everything else. But it also erodes, I think, the integrity and the credibility of the legislature when you have this kind of quick resort to an easily gamed initiative process. It sort of takes away the validity of our elected officials. And so I've also supported, in addition to a higher bar for qualifying, and better disclosure for costs and things like that. That needs to be part of the reform. You shouldn't be able to pass an initiative that doesn't pay for itself, or at least doesn't prominently disclose that it doesn't pay for itself. But in addition to that, there ought to be some sort of a loop with the legislature. An opportunity for the legislature to maybe take action before this goes to the ballot, or for the legislature to correct errors in initiatives. Sometimes we're really stuck with these initiatives once they pass. And I could give you so many examples, you all know about them, but the Political Reform Act is a great example. Passed by way of initiative, all sorts of problems in it that come up, but the only way we can fix them is by another initiative. And there's just a lot, well, Prop 13, right? A lot of other things like that. So I don't know if the politics are ripe for initiative reform right now in California. Certainly they were not when Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor, because he was a huge fan of the initiative process, thought it was perfect. Maybe Jerry Brown can add this to his sort of legacy leadership file for his second term. But I continue to believe we need major initiative reform, and I hope that's something we might be able to work on together. Hey, thank you very much.
This last question, Jared, we're not quite done. There is one more question. I wish I was creative enough to think of it myself, but this goes to an unspoken person at my table, and we all want to know. When's the last time you played basketball with President Obama and who won?
You know what, I haven't yet played hoops with the president, but there was a congressional free throw contest.
So let's give it up for our Congressman Jared Huffman. Thank you, Jared. And let's also, I think, a big round of applause for Mayor Andy Berman, who worked very hard to put this evening together. So it's a pretty hard act to follow after you get a member of Congress who's talking about all these important issues, and I want to talk about, like shared services or some local issue. But listen, the business meeting now is about to start, so I encourage everyone to stay, but I won't be, and I actually worked hard on some presentations, but I won't be insulted if people need to go. But that's what we're now working on our agenda. Is we flip-flop. Normally we do the business meeting first and then the speaker, but in lieu of tonight. So without further ado then, I want to also acknowledge our still current president of the MCC, Herb Weiner, who gave us a whole year of service, and he will be gracefully appreciated for his service in September. So thank you, Herb. Also, I'm told that, Andy, you didn't quite get it perfect. There is one more person that didn't get introduced, so I'm going to cover that for you. So go walk Jared out. We'll take care of that. So Alan Bortel, who serves on, Alan? Thank you. Alan serves on the County Division on Aging, and thank you for your service in coming tonight. And then next, if there are any new council members or people that are on the council since our last meeting, I know Mayor first wanted to make an introduction at her table of a new council member.
Thank you. Corder Madera has a new council member. He has been on our planning commission. He served for 5 years, and he was recently appointed to a 2-year term. So this is Sloan Bailey.
Thank you. And I missed another commissioner on aging and someone I know quite well, Ellie Block. Where are you, Ellie? I'm sorry. Ellie Block, we served many years on remediation services too. Thanks for your service, Ellie. Okay, we are at the point of public comment. Is there any members of the public here? Hopefully there are some that wish to be heard briefly on items that aren't on the agenda. Mr. Bartel, it sounds like you have a couple of pithy comments for us. I'll bring you the mic.
I'd just like to announce that October 23rd, Wednesday, is the Marin County Senior Information Fair. We get about 5,000 people, mostly seniors. We have about 130 exhibits and booths for all kinds of information, and if you attend, you can certainly enjoy this. It's from 9 to 3 on Wednesday, October 23rd.
Thank you. We're on to the approval of minutes. Everyone got them in the mail. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from June 26th? Thank you. Second. Wow, that was quick. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that was quick. Okay, we're on to committee reports. Thank you, Pat Eklund, for your ABAC report that was submitted in writing. One of the things that we're going to try to do this year, and I also want to acknowledge another person here, the vice president of this group, Stephanie Moulton-Peters, who's going to work shoulder to shoulder with me to help put this together. And one of the ideas that we're going to try to do is more written reports, so there's more time for the speakers to actually speak and answer questions. And so if someone needs to, talk for the reports, that's important, but we're going to try to emphasize more written reports. Did I see Nancy Bennett? Is she gone? Okay, so Madeline, are you going to cover Nancy's report? Can you do that? That would be great.
Hello all, representing the North Bay Division of the League of Cities, president this year, and I want to just relay 3 things. First of all, 4 of us from Marin traveled to Yountville to play bocce and to have a wonderful day as part of our City Pack event. And we're proud to say that we had a joint Yountville and Novato team that won. And if I could have 2 Novato folks stand. We have Eric and Denise. Here's our champions. So it was a great way of meeting other folks. We're hoping it's going to be a tradition. And so those of you that didn't come this year, we're really hoping that you'll come next year. It was a lot of fun. The second item is to remind you that next month is the League of Cities meeting. It's in Sacramento. We have a reception for the North Bay on Thursday night. That's the 19th. And we will be installing new officers. We hope you can attend. You need to RSVP if you're going to come to that. But we hope to see you in Sacramento. And then last but not least, Nancy did have to leave to take a couple of our colleagues on Backup 101, but she wanted me to tell you that things are really fast and furious in the Capitol right now, and she may be calling you on short notice to call legislators or to show up. So just wanted you to be aware of that, because there's a lot of kind of last minute action going on, and then there will be, when things get to the governor's office, there'll also be some need for you to come to the fore if we need you. So that's it from the league, and I'm going to hand it on over to Lynn.
Thank you, Madeline. So in your packets that were handed out, one of the questions that was asked for Congressman Huffman was about the St. John's River case. The formal name is Coons versus St. John's River, and I got a summary of that case from Myers Navi, which serves as the city attorney. Their firm serves as the attorney for the city of Larkspur. And so I provided that in the packet there for everyone to see. And I wanted to go over that briefly because I really do think it's a really, really important case for our local jurisdictions to understand. And here's the bottom line is why it's important. Is prior U.S. Supreme Court precedent known as the Nolan and Dolan tests, named after those two cases, what they relate to is it means that when we as cities want to exact either money or some sort of exaction or dedication to a developer or a project, like for example in Larkspur we have a big project called Rose Lane, and there's 91 units being put in, and one of the things that the prior council put together in Larkspur, which is a blessing for Larkspur, is there's a approximately 2.6 acre parcel that got carved out that's going to be for the benefit of the public. And there'll be a community facility of some type, hopefully one day, that will be built on that parcel, and the developer or the property owner at that time could have said, hey, wait a minute, there's not a proportionality to asking us to dedicate that much land. And so that's what Nolan and Dolan was about. But what's new about the Coons-St. John's River case is now what's happening is in that case what happened was the developer was asked to dedicate a certain amount of wetlands, either pay more money, make the wetlands, make a smaller project. The developer said, no, I don't accept any of the conditions the water management district was imposing. They basically punted and they sued. And so previously, they only got some sort of remedy when in fact they actually paid something or had to do something. This is the first time where the developer says, no, I'm not playing ball. So it's a great expansion of the Nolan-Dolan test, and why it matters to all of us here at the local levels. We got to have some pretty smart city attorneys or county councils to figure out to make sure we don't get ourselves in trouble. It's a big expansion of rights for property owners and developers to be able to seek a remedy if they don't like the condition that's being imposed. So it's something for us to keep our eye on. Something next that I want to talk about is, you hear me go on and on about disaster preparedness at different meetings, and so Susan, I'm about to give you a plug here, so get ready. Okay, so as people know, I serve on the Disaster Citizens Court Council, and Susan chairs that for the County of Marin. And so there's two proposals that have been put forward that have been approved by the DC3 that's before the Board of Supervisors now. And those two proposals are, one, to have a disaster preparedness program coordinator, a person that would help try to organize disaster preparedness across the county, and two, is to improve our disaster service worker program. Well, here's where Susan has helped in the background, and this is a big deal on this disaster program coordinator. I've met with Matthew Heimel, and who's the head guy of the county. I don't have his right title, but administrator, county administrator. Thank you. And he has said the county is in for 27% of the cost of the program coordinator. Why did he come up with 27%? It's approximate. Because that's the approximate per capita number of people in the county that are within the county jurisdiction, with the suggestion that basically the cities partner with the county to help pay for this coordinator. And I'm going to do a PowerPoint now to talk about this, to show what the relatively nominal cost is of what it would take in order to be able to partner with the county to get this full-time person, staff person to do this. So, and by the way, you have the copy of these slides in your packet. So we'll just move through this just real briefly. So again, there's two proposals that are before the county right now, that they're looking for leadership from the cities to partner with the county on each of these issues. And so, let's get the alarm thing going. So the problem is on disaster service workers. Well, of course, police and fire and folks like that, public safety are trained, but many of our office workers are not, that are trained. And if you think about the beauty of having disaster service workers trained in every city across the county, it provides protection for where the disaster might hit, and other areas would be fine and they can provide support. And we're not coordinated in the preparedness realm. And I can tell you from serving, for example, on the Homeless Policy Committee, it's extraordinarily helpful to actually have a full-time staff person. It really makes all the difference. So we all know the disaster preparedness circle. You know, preparedness, if we're prepared, then we're going to be able to recover faster. We respond and we recover, and then we mitigate. But if you're missing any part of the ring, it's a problem. What happens if you're missing one, then the whole circle falls apart. So preparedness is obviously a key point. Now, how many people know on Mount Tam, and this is a big deal, guys, how many people know on July 4th that we had a big fire on Mount Tam? How many people know that? Yeah. It was only about an acre, but our local resources, they threw everything they had into it. That fire had a real, you know, everyone knows right now as we speak, the rim fire in Yosemite. You know, I guess all the drinking water in San Francisco is going to be smoking full of soot. You know, but we're talking this fire on Mount Tam. It was a very close one to happen. So what's the real thing that we're really all concerned about across the county? Of course, it's the earthquake that might happen. You're supposed to laugh when you have that little touch there. Okay, so these numbers are going to be startling to you. If we have a big earthquake, like on the Hayward Fault or the San Andreas, we're talking 6,000 people dead, 360,000 houses destroyed, and $100 billion damage. Now, when is the time that people really care about local government? They care about local government, perhaps, you know, if something's going to affect them at their house, and they care about something when there's a real time of need. And if each of our 11 cities can partner with the county so that we're reasonably prepared, it's going to make an amazing difference. So what does this map show that's in your packet? The red is the heavy shaking area, but one thing to note on the map is the light pink area is actually the heavy shaking area. Anybody see their town in the light pink in there? Anybody? I know it's hard to see. If you look at your black and white, you won't tell because I didn't spring for the color photos on the copies. But the point is that the vast majority of our 11 cities are in the light pink. No, I think I went the wrong way. I'm sorry. Let's keep going. Oh, here's the next slide. This is important. After the earthquake, anybody like to drink water? Anybody like having water? So you know, part of the preparedness deal is have water. Okay, the numbers are, if we have a major earthquake in the Bay Area, then almost 2 million homes on day one are not going to have water. what's startling is you see after a week, the majority of them still won't have water. And look what happens after a month. Half of them still won't have water. How many people here have water for a month at their house? Very few. I mean, I don't know. I mean, talk to people that survived Sandy, you know, in the East Coast, and they had to do it in the winter where they were missing stuff. This is real stuff, folks. So the idea is twofold: to really put together a disaster service worker program. And I'm going to move through this really quickly. But the problem is we don't have, like at the county, for example, they have about 2,000 workers there, and about half of them are well-trained, and about half of them are not. And I would suspect that each of our cities is probably a similar percentage, where about half are trained and half are not. And what does trained mean? It's not really that expensive to do. What we're talking about is perhaps our estimates are it would be approximately $50 per employee per year to have a decent disaster service worker training program going where people are kept up to date. So I'm talking faster than my slides, so I'll move through this quickly. And what I want to show you, though, is the disaster preparedness coordinator. This is a person that will help organize all the different preparedness groups across the county, have a website, help coordinate CERT, get ready, look for grants to help pay for themselves. So here's something, and by the way, what's really sad is we don't even have the books for Get Ready anymore. No one's doing Get Ready 5. That's for 5th graders. We have a great CERT coordinator who's a Mill Valley person, but overall there's just not the coordination. So how much is it going to cost? Here's the numbers, and I put this in your packets. Assuming the cost of a disaster preparedness coordinator is about $100,000 fully loaded, salary, and all the benefits and all that stuff that comes in. So basically what we're talking about is about a quarter from the county and a quarter each from the two big towns, Centerville and Novato, and the remaining cities share the remaining quarter. So the numbers for the other 9 cities are relatively nominal. You can see, like for Mill Valley, it's 6,000, and the really small cities are even smaller than that. What this gets us is a full-time coordinator. This person would be housed at the Emergency Operations Center at the county, and because they would have been familiar with everything that's going on in the county and the people in each location, it'll be extraordinarily helpful to OES at the time the disaster hits. So what am I here for? I'm making a pitch to all of you to take back to your councils to think about, because I've made some bold comments at DC3 that Susan Adams chairs, is that now the county stepped up. They said they'll do $27,000, or approximately a quarter of the cost of this. We need to come up with the other 3/4 of the cost shared among 11 cities, and we get a full-time disaster program coordinator. I put in your packets an outline of exactly what that person would do. I want the conversation to start. This is a real deal. We don't know when the big one will hit or when the disaster in Montana is going to hit, but it will make a significant difference in all of our constituents' lives. It's not very much money that we're talking about. Be prepared. Don't let this happen to you. Okay. I'll entertain if anyone has any questions about this. I realize this wasn't quite as interesting as what's going on in Congress, but it does make a difference here on the local level. Any questions or comments on this? What I'm looking for, and I'm going to reach out to all the mayors personally, is that I'm looking for your support, for this program. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe we should stop that.
I'm with you, buddy.
Okay. All right. Let's see what else is left on the agenda. I think we're about done here. It says countywide ban is on the agenda. That's going to actually happen at the Ross meeting September that we'll have a discussion about the countywide ban. And what did I say? Countywide plastic bag ban. All right, so we actually went through that. We're going to have a little free time here. I just thought that that was a little more impact if we just leave that on there. So I think that's it. They moved through that pretty quickly. You know, stay and enjoy. I'm sure there must be some dessert or something coming. And thank you, City of Mill Valley, for a really wonderful, wonderful evening. Great food, great event. Well done.